These are actually some of my earliest works when I decided to become an artist. I've only been making art for about 2 years now, and it's called Traces. And for me, it really stemmed from my decision to go into art. When I was at university, I thought I was going to be a medical student. I wanted to study psychiatry because throughout my entire life, I had a lot of anxiety and panic attacks that I hoped that by going to school and studying about them, I would get to understand myself a little bit more. But once I started making art, I realized, this was a language I was meant to work with, not the language of science, even though that, clearly has informed my practice. It was the language of art, sort of that intangible aspect, that colors, different saturations of them, and just compositions can really tell you more than sometimes words can. And so Traces, like the name states, was a practice into mind mapping, which meant I would just let my visceral tics and compulsions really dictate the development of my composition. And my only rule was that I would not look at it, nothing would be premeditated, and as I made mistakes, people see my work as being very delicate and very fixed and very tight, but if you look closely, there's a lot of mistakes, and a lot of it had to do with me making a mistake and realizing, having a very visceral reaction to it and figuring out a way to remedy that. And so, only after I finished the piece was I able to step back and realize a lot of them had very striking similarities, mainly the fact that they look very landscape-like. They alluded to East Asian ink paintings, which for me, I had never even thought of. It was just an experiment in, let's see how my feelings, how these impulses that have plagued me for most of my childhood, how they would translate on a surface. Well, watercolor is so inflexible. It's such a complicated medium, which is why I love it. You can never really control watercolor. You have to, the most you can do is understand how to go about alternative routes if it doesn't end up being the way you want it to. Because watercolor is all about the pigment's interaction with the solvent, which is water for me, and that solution's interaction with the surface. And there are so many factors in between that can completely change how the work appears, namely, humidity, the temperature, that can either make your pieces dry much faster or much slower, and that changes how it ends up in the end. So, for me, because my practice is so tight to begin with, I love that unpredictable nature. A lot of my works, have to do with some aspect of duality, and so you cannot have control without disorder. You cannot have order without disorder, and that's just, a natural facet of life. Generally, when people ask me what type of art do I make, I ultimately have to say I do works on paper because paper is the common material for everything I make, whether it's being painted on or whether it's being folded. For me, I don't like to stick to one particular criteria, one body of work, because I'm always curious, I'm always taking in so much. I read a lot. Nowadays, I'm reading so many books on Kandinsky and, his manifesto, the Blue Rider manifesto, and it's really opened my mind to what color can mean and what color can do, and so that's affected a whole different line. But I love just, again, it has to do with me growing up and working with my fingers a lot. I love the process of cutting, I love the process of folding, and I love the idea of paper not just being a surface, but actual material to work with. And so, I've explored that material by, there's a series of works that's not here where I would paint hyper-realistic illustrations of my face, particularly captured during moments of my anxiety attacks, and then cut away. I painted diamond scales here, but in that piece I would cut away scales because much to represent how much my anxiety eats away at me, but also because why not? If you don't try, you never know what it's going to look like. And so, it doesn't have to have a conceptual basis, but I just love exploring and seeing what my craft is capable of.